Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to one of these Irish stew videos that we do on this channel, where I pick a whole bunch of stuff that's on my mind or that I've been noticing, and just talk to you about it. A special, extra big Thanksgiving edition of Irish Stew for you, since it's the holiday of Thanksgiving here in the United States, and we will break this down as usual by the world, and then the United States, and then YouTube, and then BookTube, and then finally me. And on the world stage, we got a whole bunch to talk about. Like, for instance, uh, uh, South Africa has been personally barred from the next G20 summit by Donald Trump, who has talked all about all kinds of reasons, and he has interrupted himself during the talking about all kinds of reasons to talk about other things, probably dishwashers, or how many times you need to flush a toilet. You won't know any of the interruptions because the press in the United States will simply reprint the written text of his comments that was submitted to them via email. They will never listen to the spoken version, much less report on it. And none of those reasons are true. The reason that I wanted to bring this up, and I'm pretty sure that South Africa's president knows this, none of the reasons given by Trump or the Trump administration is true. The truth is that when the leaders of South Africa get in front of a camera, they're all black. They all have black skin. And that's why they're not invited. Because MAGA is intensely racist. MAGA is basically racism. There are few political things along the fringes, but it's mostly that. So the South African president has made it clear that, we're not going to do anything that you want. You're not going to extort any behavior out of us. And it's a shame because this just further, the South African president and the spokesman did not go far enough. They did not go as far as they could have in saying that this kind of behavior on the part of the Trump regime is driving the whole world to make other arrangements, to just make other arrangements. We're going to meet with a whole bunch of nations. We're going to have all sorts of discussions about whose trade we do and whose trade we don't want and what currencies we will use. And if you're going to be this way, then we'll just omit you from those talks. We won't bother to have them with you. We'll have them with somebody, but it won't be with you. And it is the extremely stupid side of America First that refuses to acknowledge, or more likely is too uninformed to know, that if the whole world does that, America is sunk. America First, when it is canted by morons like Matt Walsh, seems to imply that America has everything it needs and can live just fine in a world in which all the other countries are making other arrangements. That's not true. You only have to look at the supply chain disruptions that were caused by COVID to know that's not true. But America First is such a comfort blanket that people just say it. So good luck to South Africa. I hope that they don't turn to even worse countries than the United States, although in 2025 it's hard to find something like that. So, but anyway, that is national news. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a whole bunch of natural world news. Like, for instance, in Crowdy Bay in New South Wales, in Australia, there was a fatal shark attack. A young couple in their 20s, as far as I can make out from as always, the news reports are disgracefully contradictory. I do not understand that in the 21st century, where everyone has cell phones, where everything is filmed. I do not understand why, even at the heat of the moment, this just happened. I don't understand why I can be reading drastically contradictory results. But nevertheless, a young couple, 20 in their 20s, was swimming in Crowdy Bay, and they were attacked by all accounts, a giant bull shark, who killed the woman and seriously injured the man. So a shark attack with details slowly coalescing. Were they far from shore? Crowdy Bay, as far as I know, I have never been to the lovely, lovely world of Australia. It's the only place in the world I've never been, and I never will be there. So I don't know. But the impression I get is that Crowdy Bay is not actually a tourist magnet, that it might not have been crowded, that maybe this couple might have gone there for the remoteness of it and were just there at the wrong time. So I don't have any details, but of course I am always attracted to the natural world and to shark attacks. This will go in the files. We don't have any idea. Were they spearfishing? Were they walking? Were they on their feet? Were they waiting? Bull sharks will go right up to the sand to attack something. And maybe that would account for why so many eyewitnesses said it was a gigantic bull shark. If they could see it, maybe that would account for it. Was there any dragging involved? Was there any conversation involved, or was the attack instantaneous? No idea. I don't know any of those details. I will be keeping an eye on it to find out. Also, in Ethiopia, Haile Gobi, a volcano in Ethiopia, erupted for the first time in well over 10,000 years. It erupted. I don't think that, as of the latest reporting, there are any fatalities of any kind, even animals. But it's not seismology and geology, volcanology. These things are not as studied in Ethiopia as they are in the United States. So I, again, don't know from initial reporting whether or not this is an initial eruption, whether or not the system is more active now than it was, whether or not sister volcanoes in the area are also showing signs of activity. No idea. Always fascinating, though, when a volcano that's been so long dormant erupts. We have quite a few of those here in the United States. And if any one of them erupted, it would be a big, big news story. And then the last world news story that I can give, I promise I do not mean to stress this just because this is Thanksgiving. But an increasing number of world health experts are raising more and more alarms about H5 bird flu. An increasing number of health experts are saying that if it were to adapt so that it is easily transmissible, not only from birds to mammals, but from human to human. If it were to do that, and keep in mind, for a virus, that's 2 generations. So about, 4 months? A year outside. A year is plenty of time for that to happen. And a number of health agencies are raising alarms saying that if that were to happen, it would result in a pandemic that would make COVID look like a day at the beach. COVID affected the vulnerable. Remember what we all went through in the pandemic? You were supposed to check for comorbidities. You were supposed to look at people who already had comorbidities. They were the vulnerable ones. It's true that the messaging of the United States government and a lot of other governments botched that severely. They didn't want people ignoring it, but there's no excuse for lying to people. But COVID-19 was, in the main, largely only dangerous to people who were already vulnerable. But that's not true of the flu. Any kind of flu. That's not true of the flu. And H5 bird flu would be even worse than the annual flu, which, keep in mind, kills lots of people. Just the ordinary everyday flu kills lots of people every year. But the H5 bird flu would be even worse because there is no human adaptability to it. It has never been part of the human biome, just like COVID. Which means people would need to be inoculated. Everyone would need to be inoculated. Otherwise, it would just let her rip. It would just run through the population. And it might seem like nothing, to 21st century ears, it might sound like nothing. But if you have studied history at all, then the mention of influenza is not trivial. It has swept like a scythe through human populations. Usually because there was no antibody immunity resistance built up. And that's exactly what it would be with H5 bird flu. And the one element that these health sources are not warning about, because it's not their job to talk about society or politics, is nevertheless the deciding element, which is, as well as I do, that if a new pandemic were announced, everyone would ignore it. That's how bad we have a vaccine denier as head of Health and Human Services here in the United States. Someone who doesn't believe that vaccines work at all. Someone who doesn't think that that HIV causes AIDS. Just an absolute conspiracy theory crackpot is the head of Health and Human Services. So if a new deadly form of flu were to strike this country, not only would he not put out any kind of advisories, certainly there would be no Operation Warp Speed, but even if there were, no one would listen to it. The whole country has been so thoroughly infected with, the whole world has been so thoroughly infected with anti-science mania about vaccines and viruses that it wouldn't be a question of how dangerous H5 bird flu is. It wouldn't matter because no one's going to pay any attention to it, and no one's going to take any precautions anyway. Think about your own friends and family. If a government, any government in the United States or elsewhere, told them to shelter in place or to put a mask on or to stay 5 feet away from their friends, how many people do you know who would obey that? Nobody would. In the United States, nobody would. So, and no local or municipal authority would agree to closing schools or churches or anything like that. So we would be royally screwed if that happened. And scientists are warning, health advisories are warning that it could happen. I mean, humans wade around in amongst birds and bird feces all the time. There's no more plentiful food anywhere in the world than birds. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. I think I mentioned it before months ago on an Irish Stew, but more and more people on the front lines who are studying this are raising alarms about it. And the sad part about it is that they're completely useless alarms. No one in the United States will pay any attention. No airline will restrict travel. No business will close. Until bodies are stacked in the streets, no one will do that. So anyway, that's a rather grim note to end the world section of this Irish Stew video. We can move on to the United States. The first thing I want to mention in the United States is straight out of Richard Evans' trilogy about the rise and the rule of Nazi Germany. Straight out of it. I have said about those books, the first two especially, the Coming of the Third Reich and the Third Reich in Power, I've said about those two books that they are 21st century America in every single detail except the proper names. If you think I'm exaggerating, I know you do. So read The Coming of the Third Reich. Your library will have a copy. It's the definitive history of Nazi Germany. Read The Coming of the Third Reich and see if you don't agree. But one of the details from that history is that the fascist regime eats its own. Every fascist regime eats its own. And that has, at least for the first time, happened. The mother of the nephew of Donald Trump's lying press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been arrested by the Gestapo. And we are told she was arrested. Of course, it's illegal. There was no warrant. There was no paperwork. There was no judge. There was no one involved. And she was also sent out of the country, which is also illegal. And we're told is in an immigrant detention center in, I don't even know, South America. And then her family is, her little boy is eagerly waiting for her to get back. I feel 100% certain that she's dead. I feel 100% certain that most of the people sent to most immigrant detention centers are in fact dead. I think if there were ever going to be a World War Crimes Tribunal on the Trump administration, the Trump regime, they would have years of work to do. That will never happen. There will never be such a thing. But I believe that this regime is steeped to its eyeballs in blood, in human blood. I don't know. I don't have any idea what the fate of this woman is. I'm sure that she's been sexually assaulted. I'm sure that she's been severely harmed and also threatened. And she'll never see her son again. But the thing that caught my attention about it was not the inevitability that all fascist regimes eat their own, but that the true believers will agree with it. If the Trump administration has ordered this woman strangled in her cell or starved to death or beaten to death, I guarantee you that Caroline Leavitt herself knows about those orders and approves of them. And so I don't know what to say to the MAGA faithful, to MAGA loyalists. I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what J.D. Vance's non-white wife is thinking. I have no idea what she's thinking. That she's going to be excluded from this? Somehow it's not going to reach her? I don't know what Nick Fuentes thinks of this. Does Nick Fuentes know what his last name is? I don't know what these people are thinking. But Caroline Leavitt has not said a word, and when she does, the word will be good. She had it coming. And then another piece of national news, the piece of national news that is foremost in the headlines right now, is that 2 National Guardsmen, young people, were shot by an assailant in Washington, D.C., who apparently planned it and drove across country. Some of you who don't live in the United States are a little confused by this. We have 2 Washingtons here. We have Washington, D.C., which is a district. It's not a state. It should be, but it's not. that is the seat of our government. And then way the other end of the country, up in the wilderness of Canada, there is Washington State. And this shooter drove all the way across the country to go to Washington, D.C. and shoot at 2 National Guardsmen. And he was not spraying the area. He shot them before he was apprehended. So this was very targeted, and we're learning more about that shooter, and we're learning more about the circumstances. But the two things that struck me about it are, number one, when I saw it, I thought, isn't it a shame that those 2 young people were shot for obeying illegal orders? The West Virginia National Guard is being deployed in Washington, D.C. illegally. And also, I thought, even before it happened, and it has now happened, I saw that and I thought, well, anything like this, MAGA is going to blame on, I don't know, trans people, or Democrats, at least, Democrats, and that Trump is going to use that for more illegal deployment of troops against American civilians, and he has done that. He's ordered hundreds more troops to Washington, D.C., where they were already picking up trash, giving neighbors tips on their front gardens, talking to kids, spending a lot of time scrolling on their phones when their commanders weren't watching. They were already idle, and now there are going to be hundreds more of them. And the purpose there is to cause trouble, to get trouble to happen, not to stop it from happening. In the nature of a Reichstag fire. So those two things struck me right away, is that those National Guards people should never have been there. Not excusing the shooter, of course. The shooter was a maniac and does not deserve to be in custody, if you know what I mean. If he's found guilty, and he is definitely guilty, then he doesn't deserve to be in custody. But I'm not knocking the National Guards people, although I could, because they obeyed illegal orders that put them in harm's way. But I am decrying the fact that this wannabe dictator is just going to use anything like this to strengthen his hold everywhere. I mean, 500, 600, 1,000 more troops patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C. If you don't think that dovetails with the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene has announced that she's resigning from Congress and has outright said in not in her original discussion, but in a later discussion, an exchange she had with MAGA troll, she has outright said that the reason she's doing this is because she was threatened. And she was threatened by people who were told to threaten her by Donald Trump personally on burner phones. So if you think that fact is not connected with hundreds more armed people in Washington, D.C. who will kill people if Trump tells them to, personally tells them to, that plus the fact that even family members of the regime are not invulnerable. If you don't think these things are connected, I don't know what more connections you would need to see. But that is sort of the grim news in specific, is the Gestapo eating their own, and also bloodshed in Washington, D.C., giving Trump the reason that he thinks he needs to send hundreds and hundreds more armed people to Washington, D.C. Those are specific grim news for the United States. But there's also a broader piece of grim news for the United States, which is that, as I mentioned, this is Thanksgiving in the United States. Kind of a vague holiday where everyone's supposed to give thanks, but especially where they're supposed to travel to their homes. Families are supposed to gather at Thanksgiving. I think the Department of Transportation was predicting record travel numbers for this year, but that, since the Department of Transportation is MAGA, that's probably a lie. We'll probably never know the real numbers, because no one in the mainstream media will actually check, will investigate to find out. But there are two things that you can know about Thanksgiving as a national holiday in the United States in 2025. One is something that, again, the mainstream media will not report on, which is that this is the hungriest Thanksgiving the United States has ever had since the 1930s, since the Great Depression. Record numbers of Americans are out of work. Jobs are incredibly scarce. Food is unbelievably expensive. Food benefits have been ruthlessly cut for huge numbers, tens of thousands of recipients. This is going to be the hungriest Thanksgiving that America has had in a long time. And going hand in hand with that is the family part. Because 200 million Americans are fully blown inducted members of a personality cult. I am not talking about their politics. They have left politics long, long behind. Politics to them is what the boss says. And in order to be a member of that cult, any cult, you have to live in an alternate reality. You really do. You need to live in a reality where 3 is more than 2. Where 30% approval rating is the highest approval rating any president has ever had. You have to live in an alternate reality in which the President of the United States, Donald John Trump, is the best president that the United States has ever had. Better than FDR, better than Washington, better than Lincoln. Where you earnestly believe that, where you earnestly think that he has stopped 9 wars because he's a deal maker. You have to live in an alternate reality in which all of that is actually true. When you are living through a reality in which he has a loving wife, loyal, wonderful, warm kids who I just love the kids so much, and then the grandkids. This warm, strong, avuncular old man who's just trying to get this country back on track. None of that is even remotely close to reality. Not a question of interpretation or various political stances. It's not even remotely close to reality. It is delusional. And that would be bad enough anyway, since all of those 200 million Americans get to vote. But during Thanksgiving, you have to go home and spend time with them. Normal people who haven't been inducted into a cult, need to go home and spend time with people who have been. So Thanksgivings in America are worse than they ever have been. Whole gigantic continents of subjects need to be a priori ruled out of bounds. Okay, we're all together. We're not going to talk about all of these subjects, and we're especially not going to mention his name. And when you do that on day 1, Thursday morning, Wednesday night of your long Thanksgiving weekend, when you have to do that, when you all have to get together in the living room and say, we're not going to mention his name, what's the one thing everyone's going to be thinking of on a holiday where they should be thinking about how much they love each other? They're going to be thinking of that name. And I guarantee you, once the wine or the beer starts flowing, the name will come up anyway. So I shudder to think what MAGA Thanksgivings are like. Only MAGA Thanksgivings are horrifying enough. Because they're leaving a chair open at the table. As I've told you for 10 years, they leave a chair open at the table because Donald might join them. They talk about what they're thankful for, and they turn to that chair and say, Donald, what are you thankful for? They believe he is a supernatural being. They worship him. Any pretext of a carpenter from Galilee, that's gone. That's not their religion anymore. They worship him. He is more than human. Imagine going home, if you're a normal person, imagine going home, if you're one of the 100 million or 150 million Americans who aren't part of this cult, imagine going home to face 4 or 5 or even 6 people in your family who are. My heart goes out to all of you. I don't particularly observe Thanksgiving all that much. I view it as blissful because I'm not going to hear from editors on this day. I'm just not. It's just not going to happen. But I don't observe it otherwise. But my heart goes out to any of you who are in that situation. Feel free, actually, to email me if you just want an ear to bend, a shoulder to cry on. A lot of you are going to do that anyway. Last year, I heard from 12 people on Thanksgiving, more than that. A lot of you are going to do that anyway. You know that I am here for that. I want you to email me. I sincerely mean that. If you send me a doctoral dissertation, I won't respond. But if you send me a normal email, I will. It's why I'm in hundreds of email correspondence with a whole bunch of you because of that, because it does work. I'm sure that there are people watching this video who could attest in the comments. Anyway, if that's working your one good nerve, feel free to email me and vent instead of venting to your family in a way that you might regret. So that is America, is that we're having a lean, hungry, eat dog food, hate your relatives Thanksgiving. Great. Fantastic. But then we can move on to YouTube and BookTube, which will certainly be happier subjects. And in YouTube, I want to recommend again the show called Maximum Fear. There's a dead-eyed stoner dude he says his name is Max. I don't know that I believe that, but he does a Bigfoot channel. He does this on other cryptozoology, but he does a Bigfoot channel. And one of his favorite things lately, in fact, a series of videos that has really done well for him, is where he scours the world, or he gets people to send him clips of the latest Bigfoot video clips. that he promises in the title of his video are not AI. And then he shows them to you. And charmingly, quite a few of them are AI. Some of them aren't, but he did his newest video is just more Bigfoot clips that I promise aren't AI. He narrates them, and boy, oh boy, well, you know, if you watch this channel, I want to believe there's nobody who wants Bigfoot to be real more than I do. And yet, I look at all of these clips, and they are all the same. They don't look exactly the same, but they are all the same. Why do they start when they do? And especially, why do they stop when they do? So you've got your camera, your phone, your high-definition camera that we all have on our persons at all times. You have that trained on this thing that is walking through a field not more than 100 yards from you. Appears to be ignoring you, and you're filming it for 30 seconds. And then you stop. Why? Why do you stop? Why do you stop? Now, since so many of the clips that Maxim Fear uploads, he will then tell you, we don't know anything about the provenance of this clip, we don't know who took it, we don't know where it was. There's a reason for that. Because if you know those things, you can investigate them and find out whether or not the person is full of sheep dip. So if you've got a video like that just comes to you anonymously, what is the reason why it stops right here at 30 seconds? Because that's when your friend tripped in the costume. That's why. If you're a dedicated Sasquatch hunter and you go out into the woods with a camera and you spot something and you start to film it and it starts to move towards you, why am I getting shaky cam Blair Witch footage of the phone suddenly pointed at the shrubbery on the floor of the forest as you run and say, oh my God, oh my God? That's not what you would do, and you know it. You would keep filming. You would keep filming. Because the first person to get absolutely clear, unambiguous film of an undiscovered gigantic anthropoid animal species will become the most famous person in the history of the world. And in 2025, after 20 years of reality TV and social media, that's all anyone going out into the woods wants to be, is famous. All of these clips have those things in common. They are not definitive, they are not clear, and why do they start when they do? And why do they stop when they do? It reminds me in a weird way if you go on Instagram or TikTok, you will see all these Karen videos, these wild Karen videos where women run up to someone who just happens to be filming and start yelling at them about how your dog is wearing mismatched clothing or whatever. And you watch those clips and you can see right away that the middle-aged woman who was cast as the Karen was standing there while the cameraman set things up and then said, all right, I'm going to count down from 3. And then she does this. So you can tell how staged they are. Same thing is true with these. Even though I want to believe, the same thing is true with these. So you watch and decide for yourself. Prepare to have your fears maximized. But anyway, then we can move on to the Birdman. I don't know if I've mentioned him on these channels before, but he is a movie commentary channel. He is absolutely terrific. Absolutely terrific. And he shot to fame because of CinemaSins. I know that's a YouTube channel that a lot of you will know, that has the sin counter up at the top. Years and years ago when I first discovered CinemaSins, I thought, what's going on here? What are you doing? Do you enjoy movies anymore? This is a grotesque way to watch a movie. The labeling is wrong on this cup? So that's a sin. And also everything else. CinemaSins is, I thought, then a singularly joyless way to watch movies. But it made them a huge amount of money. It made them a gigantic empire. And the Birdman really came to fame by doing CinemaSins videos of CinemaSins videos. So it's his own sin counter for the sins that CinemaSins is committing. Simple factual errors, in addition to all sorts of other things. In addition to CinemaSins, the key to CinemaSins formula, their gimmick, is that you don't do the willing suspension of disbelief. That is the basis of all storytelling. Cinematic, literary, whatever. The basis of all storytelling is the willing suspension of disbelief. And CinemaSins decides to watch movies without doing that, which of course ruins everything. Of course you're going to come up with a million sins if you do that. And the Birdman also goes after that. He also goes after the sheer money-grubbing cynicism of refusing to suspend your disbelief. And his videos are great. They are a great antidote to this horrible movie hating substrata of YouTube channels that are out there, like Nerdrotic or Critical Drinker, that just hate movies. They just hate movies. They love the movies that were playing when they were young, and they don't like anything else. They hate it all. And CinemaSins led that charge, and Birdman is the antidote to it. And CinemaSins recently did a video on Sinners, which is a vampire movie that I have a whole bunch of issues with myself, but I do recognize that it's effectively done. The Birdman and I could have a conversation about it. You can't have a conversation about it with, neck-bearded quasi-fascist grifters who just hate it because the cast is black. You can't have a conversation with racism. But Birdman and I could have a conversation on, I have some serious issues with that movie, even though I recognize that it's very well done. But CinemaSins did their usual thing about it, and he takes them to task for it. And it's joyous to watch. It's just joyous to watch. I'll leave links to all these things down below for your Thanksgiving viewing. And then we have a tech channel, Terren Rules. Did what I imagine will be a very common type of video in the next 20 days. And that is 30 tech gadgets that actually make good gifts this season. Now, I am not in the market for any tech gadgets. I really don't think I need an iPhone. I really don't think I do. I have not touched my crappy Android phone in days. I have not touched it in days. And that hasn't been through frustration. It's been that I just don't use it. I use it once in a blue moon to make a phone call. And that's it. So I really don't think I need even a repurposed older iPhone. I really don't think I need to spend $500 on an iPhone for a device I don't use. So I'm not in the market for any tech gadgets. I don't know about you when you're watching things like this, 10 tech gadgets you should get, 20 books you should look for or whatnot. Maybe not books because we're all vulnerable there. But tech gadgets or things like that, I tend to like those gift suggestion videos even more when I know with rock solid certainty that I am not going to be tempted, that I'm not in the market. I don't know if you're the same way, but these are really interesting either way. It's a really interesting video either way. And then we can finish up YouTube with an old favorite I recommended before. I think I've recommended Maximum Fear before because his channel is just it's so adorably dorky that I think I've recommended it before as well. But I'll recommend Isaac Arthur. I have recommended him to you many times before. He is a science popularizer. He has a science channel on YouTube. It's great. He is great. He puts a lot of work into his channel, and it has been well rewarded, and that's always nice to see on a platform that often rewards the Jack Dohertys of the world, or the Asmongols of the world. So he did a recent video on orbital farms, donuts in space that have their inner rings are farms, and how that would work, the mechanics of how that would work, far away from the growing soil of any living planet. As usual, he takes science fiction concepts and fleshes them out in reality. And that is just amazing. That is just amazing to watch. So I'll leave a link to that. And then we can move on to BookTube. Despite it being Thanksgiving Day, there is BookTube activity. Michael K. Vaughan, for instance, did Roger's Random Book Show about just random books around Vaughan Manor, and it was terrific. Oh my God, just terrific. Where Mike just picks up a random book, one after another, and just talks about them a bit. Which, I have done that. Other book channels have done that. I love it as a format because we all have a million things to say about books, and we all have a million books all around us. It doesn't have to be a themed video or a book haul or anything like that. It can just be random commentary. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then there was CriminOlly. Ollie at CriminOlly did a video in which he read, I can't believe that he did this. I haven't read this thing in 30 years. Dragonard. He read Rupert Gilchrist's Dragonard, a novel that is really bad in terms of racism. Really bad. It's shorter and far more pointed, but along the same lines as what you get in Gone with the Wind, or the big controversial blow up of this 35 years ago was Hanta Yo. Either way, I can't imagine. I watched his video. I saw his video title, and I thought, well, again, I'm not going to be tempted because there's no way I'm going to read Dragonheart again. But darn if he didn't make me interested to read it again. I'm sure that a mass market paperback of that book will crop up at the Brattle. But it wasn't just his discussion of the book. It was discussion of what it means when you are eagerly page-turning a book that you know is vile and racist. What does that mean? How should you deal with that? Dragon Art is his example, but of course the much bigger example of that is Gone with the Wind, which has an undeniable magnetic storytelling power, even though it is steeped in racism. Leave it to Ollie to take a subject like that would be dynamite, just deadly in almost anybody else's hands, and make it into such a fascinating video. I'll leave a link to it. You're definitely going to want to watch. I don't know that you're going to feel tempted. You might disagree with him. But Ollie, much like me, much like Mike, much like a few other channels, he seems to have found his way to a community that can disagree agreeably. He's got to be grateful for that. I know I am on this channel. I know I am absolutely on this channel. So you might disagree. I wonder what you'll think of the video. I thought it was fascinating. And we can move to T at Erudite Adventure. He did an interview with an indie author named JR Carrel, and it was great. Just absolutely great. The Fantasy Tube, the world, the separate kingdom of Fantasy Tube, they have a tendency to talk with authors, both mainstream and especially indie authors. They all have a tendency to do that. And they're all good at it. Really, really good at it. And this was really, really good. Again, if you are at all susceptible, well, you're probably going to want to order a book by JR Carrel. You probably are going to want to, because he is such a lively and accessible author. So I'll leave a link. It's a really good interview. And then we can finish up with BookTube with Sunnyvale Reject. He did a 2-part video. I think it's only 2 parts of books that he's grateful for. He ties it in with Thanksgiving and does a couple of videos on books that he's grateful for. And it was wonderful. Just, I imagine we could all make a video like that, or more than one video like that. We have, right? Just a little while ago, this year, that whole Books That Shaped Me tag went through this little area of BookTube and was fascinating along those same lines. I loved it. I love videos like that. And that leads me to the me section of this extra big Thanksgiving Irish stew, which is Thanksgiving, which I don't keep in any other way. It's national mythology. The more you know about Plymouth Plantation, the more you know about any of that time period, the less likely you are to celebrate it unless you are MAGA. In which case you are celebrating it not so much for what happened hundreds of years ago, but because you would like to exterminate more people today. The gigantic America First movement, which is gathering speed and strength and political momentum and money here in America, is far, far to the right of MAGA. MAGA is not racist enough for them. So I'm not so much celebrating that, but I love the idea that we have a day that calls us to enumerate and think about what we're grateful for. I love that. We ought to do that a lot. The Dude Bro channels, they aren't right about much, but they're right about the value of a gratitude journal or gratitude moment in your day. They're right about the value of that. Because we all have a lot to be thankful for, even when life is beating us up. We still do. And so the me section is just a thank you. I know that's awful hokey, but again, I vary from being bare knuckle horrible to being hokey on a dime on this channel. I want to thank you. I will thank you in a few weeks even more, but I want to thank you on this day of Thanksgiving. I want to thank you for all the fun that we have here. All the back and forth, all the teasing comments that I just love so much. Whether they're in my emails or they're in my comment section, I love them so much. And 10 years ago, I did not have them. This has just been an addition to my life. That's all. An almost entirely great addition to my life, where you all see, most of you, 99.9% of you, seem to get my humor and return it in kind, which is wonderful. That is just incredible. I'm still thinking of the one horrible malefactor, you know who you are, who politely suggested that maybe the trouble I'm having with finding a winter jacket that fits has something to do with all the calzones and Oreos, and not with coats being made in South Korea. I'm sticking with the South Korea explanation rather than the one that you heretically brought up. But this is a year in which I've got book tribute from library book sales, where I impose this rule. Instead of you all telling me to go to hell in a handbasket, you actually complied. and everything else, all the discussions that we've had, it's just been wonderful. So when it comes to Thanksgiving, when I am enumerating things, I definitely want to thank you for this whole thing. So I will wrap this up here on a nice, warm, fuzzy note. If you are having family Thanksgiving and it's going rough, my heart goes out to you. Know that you have my sympathy. And I'm gonna wrap this up and go be thankful with my own little bean for a little while. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.